I kind of realized that the design kind of job that I wanted to do, first of all, there wasn't that many of them. So I kind of did some rethinking that summer and came back and said, why don't I get my hands dirty and actually build the houses and the buildings that I want to.
My guest is Peyton Harm, Vice President of Construction at Quinn Residences. Peyton has built over 500 homes in production environments as some of the largest builders in the country.
What really matters for the customer is the guy that's actually out there in the dirt at the community building the house and what his personal standard is for quality and doing a good job. Construction is an imperfect business. Treating rental communities as less quality than a for sale product. It's actually the opposite. We have a higher standard than your typical homeowner. Building these rental communities at scale is not about speed, it's about the systems, so that when the vendor steps on site, they know that we are protecting the NOI.
Welcome back to Inside the Vendor Network, an Everresi original series where we're spotlighting the operators, platforms, and partners shaping how the SFR and BTR industry actually works. This show is built for owner-operators, investors, and leaders who care about performance, discipline, and long-term execution. If you're here new, welcome to Inside the Vendor Network. And if you've been here before, thank you for being a part of this community. Before we jump in, make sure you have subscribed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Today's conversation is about building entire dedicated rental communities and leading the builders who deliver them. My guest is Peyton Harm, Vice President of Construction at Quinn Residences. Peyton oversees multiple builders constructing full neighborhoods of purpose-built rental communities. Quinn's portfolio is 100% dedicated rental communities. Peyton has built over 500 homes in production environments as some of the largest builders in the country before stepping into the SFR BTR platform leadership. So he recently earned his general contractor's license. So we'll be getting into that with him. And personally, actually owns some short-term rentals of his own, giving him both institutional oversight and personal capital lens and risk perspective. So he brings a unique lens today to the show. A quick thank you to our sponsors, Palisade Wall, Panel, and Shower Systems, trusted across SFR and BTR portfolios for faster installs, cleaner turns, and long-term durability. Peyton, welcome to the show. Let's get inside the vendor network. I'm so happy to have you here today with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you and I have developed a relationship over the last year, going on a couple years now, working together. But I think it's really important for the audience to get to know the guest. I always like to point out, especially to people in your role, there's one of you and many of us vendors and community members out here in the industry. So a lot of us know who you are, but they don't necessarily know who you are. So before we talk about overseeing entire rental communities, who is Peyton Harm? And tell the audience today, share with them a little bit about you and where you come from and all the good stuff.
Sure. So I'm here. Was born and raised here in Atlanta, where our Quinn offices are. We're here in Buckhead, and I grew up, 15 minutes up the road in Marietta, East Cobb area. Growing up, I thought I always wanted to be an architect. Wanted to build or design, custom homes or, design beautiful buildings and facades. But that led me to look for architectural schools here in the Southeast to go to college, and ended up choosing to go to LSU. So I made my way out to Louisiana, did architecture for a year and enjoyed it, but realized, after that first year, looking at, hey, what's this job going to look like once I graduate? And I kind of realized that the design kind of job that I wanted to do. First of all, there wasn't that many of them. So, being the main designer that actually designs the house and designs the buildings, that's a small cohort of what architects actually do. And then, the road to get to that job was long and not very appealing. So I kind of did some rethinking that summer and came back and said, why don't I, get my hands dirty and actually build the houses and the buildings that I want to design. So I ended up switching over into construction management, and then graduated from LSU in construction management, and started, and I learned commercial construction, industrial construction, road construction, across the board at LSU. But I really kept being drawn to the home construction. So right out of school, I got a job with D.R. Horton locally there in Baton Rouge.
They're a little small company, right?
Right. Very, very small boutique builder. So I got started with D.R. Horton. I started learning, drinking from a fire hose, learning everything I could about actually building houses. And that's also around the time that I kind of got bit by the real estate investing bug, because I was thinking, hey, I'm getting this salary now. I'm living like a college kid still, so I'm saving money. And I'm like, hey, what if I, go and build or buy a house, and my friends are still going to LSU. What if I rent the rooms out to them?
Smart.
What does that look like? So, and I didn't know the answer. I didn't know, how big of a house should I buy? How much should I spend? I realized I didn't know any of that. So that's when I really started listening to real estate investing podcasts, and starting to learn how to underwrite residential real estate.
Impressive. So, funny story. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I don't know if I knew that you started down the path of architecture and then ended up in construction. But, I did 2 years of architectural engineering school as well.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I know. Could you imagine me being an architect? Like, I would drive everyone batty.
Yeah.
I actually ended up, that's what it was. Like, I was sitting in CAD class one day, or it might have even been physics. And I think it was CAD. And all the students sitting around me I swear, the vibes were like, will she ever just shush? Like, like she needs to be out selling these houses, not designing these houses. But I can relate to your love of design. And I think that's kind of how my journey ended me up here too, is when I looked at a house, I could imagine the people in it and the, maybe the cocktail parties that would be in it, or the holidays celebrated with a family. And so I liked design as it related to lifestyle. And so it kind of funny how I ended up with, in finishes and how it impacts lifestyle. So we'll get to that. But yeah, so you cut your teeth. Oh, before we get into the business. So you have a beautiful wife. I know Carolina. She's amazing. And then, of course, let's talk a little bit about Chimmy. Everyone's got to know about, your personal life a little bit here. So your wife is brilliant, like very smart woman too. How'd you guys meet? And tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah. So my wife and I met back in 2018. We actually met on a dating app. So my construction, the neighborhood that I was building was like right across the street from the condo that she was living in. And so we, were close vicinity, and we ended up matching up and
nice,
going out on a date. And yeah, I met her when she's originally from Puerto Rico and came here to Atlanta to study her PhD at Emory. So she was going through her PhD program at Emory when we met. And then, we dated for a few years and ended up getting engaged and got married in 2021. Actually right after I accepted the job here at Quinn. And then we also got a dog around that time. So we rescued a Chihuahua Terrier mix.
He's so
named
cute.
Kimmy, which is short for Chimichanga.
Yeah.
Originally, Carolina wanted to get 2 dogs. She wanted to name one Chimmy and one Chunga, and I said, let's just start with one first.
Yeah, you're a little more on the conservative side. I mean, she is too, but and now the two of you kind of enjoy your love for real estate investing together. You own some Airbnbs and have a nice start to a portfolio that you began back in the day. So that was exciting to learn about you guys, as we did a shower system in one of those.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I originally started off in long-term buy and hold rentals. Well, I should say I did end up finally figuring out how to house hack, and it wasn't when I was still in Baton Rouge. I ended up moving back to Atlanta, taking a job here in Atlanta with Edward Andrews Homes about a year and a half after graduation, working for D.R. Horton. And it wasn't until I got back to Atlanta that I ended up buying a townhome with 3 bedrooms and renting 2 of the bedrooms out to a friend and my cousin, actually.
Yeah.
And I gave him a great deal.
How can I get these guys to pay my mortgage?
I gave them a great deal. They're under market rent for sure.
Oh, okay.
But it definitely helped me, that helps pay the interest on the mortgage. And,
sure.
It helped me supercharge my savings again. So, I did that, was able to save some money, was able to renovate the townhome while I was living in it.
You getting your hands dirty and doing some stuff.
Yeah, some sweat equity there. And, obviously having builder knowledge and experience and having access to that trade network also helped.
Sure.
Well, so I was able to do a lot of that work myself, or, anything that was more specialized. I had vendors on hand that I could tap into.
Well, you were also starting to develop those relationships, right? Because those vendor relationships is so important. And, here we are inside the vendor network. And one of the reasons why I started this podcast is it allows you and others who want to see what other vendors are offering. And I also noted that a lot of people in your industry, or, people in the construction industry, do lean on a lot of podcasts. To your point earlier, you said you started listening to podcasts. And I think this is a great way to bring the two together, bringing buyers and vendors together, and vendors really didn't have a platform dedicated to our space to talk about what their value proposition is, what their key differentiators are. And at arm's length, you can reach in and, I've seen Go Roof Tune Up at some of the conferences, or I've seen End-to-End Solutions or American Destiny, or, Palisade Shower Systems, or all the different vendors. Well, let me actually take a minute and learn a little bit more about that company. Oh, I kind of like that guy, because we do business with people we like as well. So it gives you a way to connect with vendors. But all right, so let's back up. So you work for three very different production environments, between D.R. Horton, Empire Communities, and Edward Andrews. So what did working inside those systems teach you about discipline and margin and accountability? So we're talking a little bit like, hey, it got me learning to connect with vendors. I started to get my hands dirty and learn the business coming out of college. But what systems did you see? And the different disciplines, how do the margins work a little bit different in those environments? And what does accountability look like in those environments?
Yeah, I would say they were all different. I would say the biggest jump was D.R. Horton to Edward Andrews Homes. Edward Andrews Homes was more of a private builder here in Atlanta, which closes around 500 to 600 homes a year, whereas D.R. Horton was the largest home builder in the nation.
Sure.
So a lot more corporate, a lot more speed driven, I would say. But I think what, I learned a ton in both roles. I think one of the things that I learned and I talk about now here at Quinn is, these companies' cultures and the corporate speak, if you will, they can talk about, quality or, the customer experience or, the good buzzwords, but it actually what really matters, for the customer, for either if it's me or if it's the home buyer buying an actual house, what really matters is the guy that's actually out there in the dirt at the community building the house, and what his personal standard is for quality and doing a good job. And what really matters is that the overall company is giving him the tools and the support that he needs or she needs to be able to get that job done, and satisfy the customer. And that includes having the right vendors and trade partners that can perform and, come in and fix, any issues that do arise. Construction is an imperfect business. We're not building houses inside of factories or warehouses. Things break or, get messed up. We're dealing with wood products that warp and twist and are not perfectly level. So
humans,
yeah,
that are far from perfect.
Yes, that's right. So it's the person that's actually in the field, that really drives that experience.
Yeah, and that finished product. We used to have a saying at the organization. My background was in flooring, and one of the things that we used to always say is we're only as good as our lowest common denominator, right? So, your weakest link is setting your standards, and so we had a intentional way of making sure, to your point, are we providing the platform, the environment, and equipping with the resources, the skill set, the training needed to be successful, right? That's step one. And then are they showing up and receiving that? And are we giving them autonomy to make mistakes? Mistakes are part of this business. Mm-hmm. However, are we setting expectations, right? Around quality, speed, timelines. Those are really, really important. And in this space, even more important, because a day missed on rent, starts to compound. A day missed at closing for D.R. Horton, that's not going to go overlooked. And at Edward Andrews, where it sounds like it was more of probably a semi-custom builder, mm-hmm. You've got other moving parts where your homeowner or your actual buyer of the home is more involved than maybe in a D.R. Horton build. There might be some specific walkthroughs with the home buyer in a D.R. or an Empire Communities. In an Edward, maybe your homeowner is just showing up wanting to see because they want to, try a different paint color on this wall, or, they're a little more involved in the build. And those are two different skill sets of site personnel. Those are two different skill sets of different trade labor and things like that. But, Edward Andrews, so you were part of like 500-600 homes. Like you had right out of college. You got some significant experience. 500 homes is not a small builder in my eyes. That's still a decent sized builder. And you were able to be a part of that. What does that level of volume teach you about systems? So the variety of levels, but what does that teach you about systems specifically around communication and then at scale? What breaks as you go from a 500-600 homes to thousands of homes with D.R. Horton to now at Quinn? Those are all different scales of builder. What are some of the systems that you think are basics and like key to making sure the wheels stay on the track?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say it all comes down to your schedule. When you're in the field and building the houses, your schedule, staying on top of your schedule is key. And you really have, in my mind, the two biggest bottlenecks when I was working as a builder was, right before you went into drywall. So you had already poured the slab and framed everything. You got all the rough mechanicals in, everything is good to go, but it's getting through those inspections. And that's the most time consuming part is, checking the house, walking through the house, making sure everything's ready, calling in that inspection, addressing any inspector items, and making sure also, if you're building semi-custom, making sure that all of the things that need to be there behind the wall are there, checking your spec sheet. So getting into drywall, that's like the first big hurdle. And then once you get to the end, you get to that CO final inspections part and the punch out, that last 1 to 5% is the hardest part of the construction process because it's so time consuming to get all the details right at the very end in order to turn that over to the homeowner. So those are some of the things that I learned, being at a home builder. Being a home builder on site was, I had a customer, I had to deal with inspectors and subcontractors. And then I had the end customer that had, each customer had their own emotions and their own,
expectations, right?
yes, each owner had their own emotions and their own expectations of what they thought their home should be or quality. Whereas here, switching gears over to being on the owner side at Quinn, now I'm overseeing, my customer change. It's no longer the end customer. My customer is now my acquisitions team and my operations team, and making sure that I turn over a good house to our operations team so that they can operate it efficiently to our actual ultimate customer, which is the resident that's going to live inside the house.
Yeah, you've got more customers now. Ultimately it's the money, right? The fund, the investor. You've got your bosses, right? You've got to keep the timelines and the communication going. You've got your leasing team where you're turning over the product and they have their own targets to hit so they can deliver ultimately the best resident experience, because you can lease it once, but renewal is where it really impacts, right? So I recorded yesterday with a maintenance vice president of maintenance of another owner operator, and he's like, those telltale scorecard is at renewal. How well did my maintenance team and how well did I and my leasing team do once that home was turned over to us? You could nail it and they could blow it. You could blow it and they can nail it and actually recover, some things. So it's definitely a big ecosystem of working together and cross collaborating across multiple teams. And then marketing, right? Even just marketing the homes and getting out in front of the right buyers. So, or in this case, leasers. So you started in Quinn Residence in 2021. Quinn builds, for the audience that isn't familiar with who Quinn Residences is, led by your leader, Richard Ross, and Colleen Yeager as COO, who are amazing leaders, right? And when we go back to culture and we talk about culture, that's in a culture of accountability and autonomy, where you're hired and given the bandwidth to lead your teams, and your team is the builders that work for you. So, they're not necessarily, and of course you've got Lee and Joel and those guys, but the team is really the builder, and they're not on your payroll, right? So it's a different thing. So same in the flooring space, we were using subcontractors to install our flooring. they were very much impact the end result of what our brand was going to be. And so talk a little bit about builders and why does it matter from a construction lens who's building your homes?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, Quinn Residences, we do dedicated rental communities. So we have the luxury of, we're not going out and buying, existing houses and trying to renovate them to our standard. We're actually developing whole communities. And so a lot of times we are the developer, where we're pushing the dirt, putting in the sewer and the utilities, paving the roads. And then we go out and contract a home builder to build on our land. So that gives us a huge advantage. If you're looking at it from an owner's perspective, holding on to these homes and managing these homes for many, many years. So what we can do is we look for a home builder that can build at the pace that we want to build at. And then that they're building houses that are durable and can be maintained for many years. So what we try to do is, when we're creating a community, each builder has different floor plans, and sometimes they'll have different manufacturers that they have deals already with. But what we do is try to standardize everything across the board, so that if we're going to be maintaining these and we need to replace something 3 years down the road, we need to be able to have that SKU already in stock.
Yeah, some consistency from an operations standpoint. So, if David and his maintenance team are going in a turn scenario, prepping that house, or an occupied scenario to prep that house for the next, and there's something wrong with the floor, or, there was a ding on the wall, the color is, you don't have agreeable gray in one house and, fog gray in another. You're streamlining those things to keep the chaos down, right? So
we're looking for a home builder that can that understands that and can build within that framework.
Flexibility maybe around some of the agreements that they have in place work for them, but may not work in this BTR model because of how later you're going to manage, your team is going to manage. I've seen some really sexy prop techs lately. I met with a company at the Builder Show last week, and they showed me the ability to an inbound call to come in from a resident describing a squeak in a compressor or their air conditioner, like, hey, there's a noise, and it's in the compressor, they think. And the data around AI with the manufacturers, knowing that there might only be 4 parts that could actually squeak, and then reach in real time into the inventory of a maintenance truck to see if all 4 parts are on that truck, so to impact the resident as least amount of times as possible. So you could do the one trip fix and really impact resident experience. And when we think about resident experience, getting that dialed in compared to what we've seen over the last decade in this industry is crazy to me. So, and even in the build, like with Palisade Shower Systems, of course, I represent Palisade, and we're putting the showers in your homes, working with your team on new innovation that is going to possibly, drive down NOI, less maintenance, less interruptions, drive resident experience, possibly lease the home up faster because it's a nicer finished product compared to the homes that are sitting around it. That is what's amazing. And I've witnessed you work with your builders to introduce a new product like that. You do that so easily because of your relationships. And I know that's top down. So talk about the relationships that Quinn, how do you guys go around how do you work with your builders and develop those relationships to also encourage innovation, not the same standard quote, like, hey, I know you have your agreements to these manufacturers, but we're looking for innovation. You guys are doing some other things like building your hallways wider, your stairways a little bit wider too, because of move-ins and move-outs. Talk a little bit about the construction of a BTR home as opposed to a regular standard home, because you know it's going to be a lease. That's really unique with Quinn that I've learned.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do is we present our builder, up front when we're going through and underwriting these deals, and going through that process of selecting a builder. We're providing our standard spec sheet, which includes a lot of things that cost more money up front that you wouldn't see in like a for sale house. But we'd rather spend that money up front and not have to replace it over and over and over throughout the life cycle. So I'd say like two of the biggest things line items that we spec in our homes is hard surface flooring versus carpet. So we don't install any carpet in our houses at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that even includes on the stairs, we're installing LVP treads and risers so that we're not having to touch up paint on risers and we're not having to replace carpet. And then the other one would be irrigation. So a lot of times you won't see that on a for sale production home. But we include irrigation on every single one of our houses because we really care about that curb appeal and the way that our community looks when you're driving through it.
Sure. So Peyton, getting your general contractor's license was one thing, but you also own your own rental communities. So those two dynamics, I mean, that makes you an owner and an entrepreneur. How does having your own capital in the game, right, as like you're in it as well, change how you think about construction decisions?
So I own a couple of rentals that I had even before I started at Quinn. And that has given me real world experience and kind of skin in the game, if you will. Because when a maintenance issue pops up, I feel that with my own dollars, my bank account. So I know how that feels from an operator's perspective. And what's been great about then joining Quinn and being here is I already had that base knowledge.
Sure. That working knowledge.
But now I'm here surrounded by some of the best operators in the industry, and I'm able to learn from them, and that's helped me become a better operator myself and provide a better experience to my residents.
100%. Those make a big difference when you drive into your community. Even your shrubs and your landscaping is a little more than even a standard production builder neighborhood. That, like, I know when I bought my house, they had some standard shrubs in my house, and one of the first things I did is I ripped them out. I was like, those are garbage. Those got to go. Those are going to be a maintenance nightmare because of the way they grow. And I'm a big gardener, so I know a lot about shrubs and things. But even that, from a maintenance perspective, you're being very intentional on what type of landscaping you're putting in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which might not be standard, for a builder that you're working with. They're like, no, these are the shrubs we put in. And, you got to work through that. So in the audience, I guess if you're a builder or you're looking into becoming a fee builder and working with an owner operator, like a Quinn Residence, I think it's really good for the audience to know that there are some of these specific things that these builders that may be tweaked or depending on the community. Also going back to like local permitting and things like that, there's sometimes specific rules in certain areas around irrigation, right, and different landscaping and things that are allowed or not allowed, fencing. Now you guys do fence too, right? You offer like fence opportunities. Is that standard in your homes? How do you guys decide whether or not someone gets a fence?
Yeah, so it's standard across all of our single family detached homes. We like to have a yard so that residents, I'd say 50% of our residents have pet.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to let the dog out the back without having to worry about the fence being there or not is a big thing for our residents.
Huge.
And then townhomes, it really depends on, the site layout. If we have room, if there's a backyard and there's room to put a fence, we put a fence back there. It depends on the flow and the feel of the community, and if it's front loaded versus rear loaded. So we take that into consideration.
Yeah.
So, but I was gonna say too, as far as home builders or fee builders, I think it would go back to what you mentioned earlier, would be the flexibility. You might be used to building it one way, but each customer on the build to rent side is going to have their own specifications of what they want to see in a house. But the good news is you're building 150 of them the same way. You're not having to build each one differently, ideally. But it's working with it's the communication back and forth and the flexibility of being able to work with the owner and get what they need inside the house.
Yeah. So, switching gears a little bit. So what does a vice president, if you think about your job and you think about being the VP of construction, overseeing multiple builders, in one sentence, what do you think the main responsibility of your role is in that?
Yeah. So I ensure that our builders are building with quality. I ensure that our spec is consistent across the board. And then I'm making sure that I'm staying on top of our delivery pace and schedule so that when we hand these homes off to our resident or to our operations team, they can focus on the resident experience.
Yeah. And then personally, you recently got your general contractor's license. I always love to see employees, when they were mine, investing in their own education. That provides a lot more value as an employee to Quinn. They've got their vice president of construction not only went to college and earned a degree, but you took it a step further and invested. That's an investment you made on your own into yourself, and essentially for Quinn as well. So that's really good. You've got a whole different lens. You've got a whole different level of expectation as a licensed general contractor. You're expected to know more. So personally, why was that important to you at this stage of your career?
Well, I think I really wanted to get the GC license just to kind of memorialize everything that I've learned the past, decade plus of being in the home building industry.
It's like a personal challenge too. Like, let me see what I really know or don't know.
Right. I mean, I would say that I could already, talk in excruciating detail with home builders about anything home construction related because I was in the field and did it. Right. But having that GC license gives, another layer of industry knowledge.
Sure. Credibility.
Right. And it also gives us flexibility to be, I'm the qualifying agent for Quinn now. So
nice.
It gives me flexibility to go out and pull permits on, some of the smaller projects that we do. We put in pocket parks and light amenities. We build maintenance garages, that sort of thing. So not only do we have the GC license for just the knowledge base, but I also am able to go out and pull permits for these smaller projects and actually save Quinn money by managing them in-house.
Yeah, I mean, you're adding a tremendous amount of value there for Quinn. It can probably also impact timelines as well and gives you more control over the build. And a personal responsibility because that's your license, right? So you're taking your accountability and your responsibility to another level and saying, hey, I'm not only putting Quinn's name on that, I'm putting my own personal name on that. And my license and, could be at risk if I were to do that inappropriate or didn't do it right or, in teaching the team. So from your seat, let's switch and talk a little bit about strategy at scale. You talked about if, the builder, you may be asking for some tweaks and some customized things for your homes. I know you even, I was thinking while you were talking about solar, you pre-wire, some of your homes have solar, some are pre-wired for solar. That isn't something you're going to see in a traditional, DR Horton home. It may be an upgrade if the buyer wants to upgrade to something like that. But, and I know from working with you guys on Moccasin Wallow from the shower perspective is, you might have 3 sixplexes and 4 fourplexes and a couple duplexes working at once. You're moving. I mean, Moccasin Wallow is going fast in my eyes. Like, I'm like, dang, it's just clockwork. That's a big deal for the builder because to build out, what are we at? 258 homes, I think, down there. That's going to go a lot faster than 258 separate homeowner builds.
Right.
And the flow is going to go different. So talk about scale.
Sure. Yeah. So the scale is huge because, and I think the ability for us to be able to go fast during construction starts from the beginning. So we have to get very detail oriented at the very beginning of the project, well before we actually get our first permit, so that then we are able to go fast. And it also brings to mind the 2 things that I talked about earlier in the podcast about, the construction timelines is getting through that, framing inspection and then getting through that final inspection. So that's another thing we work with our home builders with early on and reiterate is we are very quality focused. We are going to be maintaining and holding on to these homes for many years. So this in a process is it can either take, we can focus on it now and it can take, a couple weeks, or some builders have been tripped up by that process and it drags on longer than that. And we eventually get there, but the end punch out work, it's like that last 1%, but it's the most important part of the construction build process. So having that system down early helps you move quickly throughout the rest of the project.
Yeah, let me reiterate that back to you, because it's a big learning curve on the BTR side. So what you were saying to the audience is, hey, maybe at the beginning, and we start this first 6plex building or this 4plex building or this 2plex building, and we identify a design challenge, or we didn't anticipate this little return wall here, or why is that bumping out like that? It may take a little longer to work through the solve on that, because you're not making a decision just for that home, that one building. This is something that you're going to consider, hey, we're going to own this home for a long period of time here. Let's make sure we're making the right decision at scale, because you could just quickly make a modification, but not fully think through how that modification impacts things at scale over a long period of time. Is that a bit like that? And once you work through those first buildings, I know we did that with the showers, a couple different floor plans, you tend to figure it out. We didn't really have much with the showers because they're pretty simple, and you're talking about a 60 by 36. Yeah. So it's really not a lot of moving parts. But boy, that could be different with cabinets or a pantry.
Yeah. No, actually at Moccasin Wallow, we have a great builder partner there, Marquise Homes, and they actually came to us, during the first construction and said, hey, we actually think a couple of the door locations where they're opening into the bedroom, it makes sense if it opened further down the hallway, so that when you walk in, the the bed is positioned correctly and the closet is positioned correctly, and we can gain some more space by just moving a couple of doorways around. So that was huge for us because, for them, it's kind of against, it kind of hurts them because it slows them down during that first building, but they had the foresight and the owner mindset in mind to be able to suggest those changes so that they slow down the first couple buildings, but that change was then able to be implemented throughout the rest of the project.
Sure.
And it makes for a much better end product and customer experience.
Yeah, and they're an experience fee builder, and their investor as well, Lafayette, also owns some rentals. So they have a lens, and I think that's always important. So if you are an owner operator out there and you're looking to hire a builder, look for a builder that potentially also owns their own portfolio and understands the importance of these things versus just getting the home done and just hurrying up to get to that CO and turning that home over. So predictability, financial strength of a builder, supply chain reliability, multi-market capacity, that's important too, right? So you'll work with some local builders, but is it important to you to also have builders that could work in possible multi-market capacities for you?
Of course, we have builders that are focused on one market. We have builders that are across the country.
Sure.
We're really just looking for the expert in that market. So, we have builders that have the capability of going, like we have a Florida builder that could have the capability of going to Raleigh, but do they know all the trades there? Do they know the municipalities? Do they know how to get the permits approved? Do they know what the person at the municipality is looking for?
Do they know Jane? And Jane likes whatever Starbucks coffee she likes. Like, do they have those relationships built to just, not get special preferred treatment, but prioritize knowing that they're a good builder? Because municipalities, if they know you're not a great builder, you don't have a great reputation, your stuff might take a little bit longer. It might get holes poked in it a little bit more. So you're looking for those relationships. That makes sense.
They also know what can trip you up during the process. There's municipalities that they ask for a set of requirements. You go to submit a permit and then they bring a whole nother set of requirements. Whereas a home builder that's been through that process a few times, they know, oh, they're asking for this, but I'm also going to provide them this, and this.
Because they're going to come back and ask for that. Yeah, I never thought of that, but I'm not a builder. So I dropped out in my architectural engineering, went finishes. So what causes trust to break down between operators and builders? Where does friction begin or can happen?
So I would say predictability. So having a vendor or a builder that has the capability of being there when you need to, being able to scale up. We're building, sometimes 15 to 20 houses per month, delivering houses. So that looks like, if you multiply that over a 5-month build cycle, there's a lot of homes in production. So being able to handle that production, be able to install with quality, and then if, like we said earlier, construction is an imperfect process. Not all the time, but there are times when you're going to have to come back and fix something that somebody else messed up or something that your installer messed up. And being able to prioritize that and fix it with speed, and being predictable and being that predictable trade partner is key.
Without delaying the momentum of the schedule while also circling back and being able to scale around that, prioritize that. Yeah, that's important, super important. Even just from a trade perspective, just one trade, that you've got to be able to scale or lean into a problem pretty quickly and resolve it without impacting the normal schedule. Like this is
Yeah.
additional workload.
And I would say that goes both ways too, right? 'Cause the vendor also needs to have predictability from their home builder, or the home builder needs to have predictability from us. We can't be, when we say something is going to be ready, it needs to be ready so that you can come in and get your job done. Same thing with the home builder. If I say we want the house a certain way, we can't change midway through the project and slow everything down. So predictability, I would say, is key.
Yeah, and good communication, right? So touch points, I'm touching the marquee team every couple of weeks and, saying, hey, and they gave us access actually as a manufacturer into their builder trend so that we can see that the build, if it's slowed or delayed or sped up, or, oh, wow, you guys were wanting, 5, 6 plexes in the month of January. But it ended up being 4, being able to flex down, but be able to pick that up going into February, right? To make up the overall schedule and be communicating. So I don't just always, my team doesn't just always rely on what's in Builder Trend. We're picking up the phone and saying, hey, I noticed this in Builder Trend. We still on par for this. What do you anticipate? And those conversations and everyone playing their part in there is important. So how does construction discipline today protect NOI 5 years from now? Just to kind of tie this all together.
Yeah, so it goes back to the quality of the construction and the materials that are getting installed in the houses. So the biggest thing that I like to focus on is quality and in our spec sheet, because if you get those two things right, you're going to save yourself a lot of maintenance costs down the road, which protects your NOI. So you may spend a little, like we said, you may spend a little bit of money, more money than you normally would up front during the construction, but that's going to protect your NOI down the road.
Sure.
For when you're holding these homes for many, many years.
Yeah, cheaper is not always better, right? And so, in flooring in my past, there's always a cheaper LVP we could put on the floor, right? There's something you can source. Price is variable as it relates to performance. And so using products that do have a track record of success is really, really important, especially in a day and age where everyone's bringing out the shiny new product. How do you evaluate a new spec, or potentially entertain switching a spec? What are those things that you're looking for, high level? Maybe even in reference to like warranty periods, because once that home turns over, you actually have warranties on your homes from the builder as well. But once those warranties are done, the manufacturer is going to carry a warranty on a lot of stuff in your home. How does that work?
Yeah, so when we're looking at those things, we're really focused on the materials that are going to have that big NOI impact on the road by not having to be replaced or repaired.
Appliances, those type of things.
So we're also it's not always about just the dollar figure of saving money down the road, but it also is about the aesthetics and the customer experience, because the industry that we're in, we're competing against other built-to-rent operators. We're competing against high-end multifamily products. So we are looking to build a house that makes sense from an investment perspective, but we also need to be competitive in the aesthetics of how our houses look.
Sure.
So when we can combine aesthetics with durability and long-term maintenance, that's what we're looking at when we're evaluating different products to use.
Yeah, that's the triple win, right? It is. And resident experience is at the forefront of everything you guys talk about and everything that you guys are doing. You're right. And what does the demand want? What does the resident look for, and differentiating your product in the market as opposed to the next rental home community down the road? And I saw recently, you guys have put out a post on LinkedIn about putting in a beehive in one of your communities, or like beehive, right? I guess that's how you say that.
Yeah.
And that'd be so easy to say, no, we don't need that. That's just an extra cost. But it made sense for that community to put in a beehive. Or, I know pickleball's an emerging sport. There's different things in your community that you guys are willing to put in your communities.
Yeah, we like to stay competitive with the different amenities that we provide our residents. So we put a lot of thought and effort into designing the amenities that are in the neighborhoods. We do pickleball courts. We'd like to build a clubhouse and pool anytime we have a community that's over 150 homes.
Mm-hmm.
We're building one in South Atlanta right now that has a big pool and a splash pad.
For the houses.
It's going to house our offices and for our on-site staff, but also have a club area and business hub for our residents. It also is going to have a pickleball court, a nice nature trail that goes down to a large and small dog park. And so we like to stay competitive with our amenity packages. And then we do some of the other things like you mentioned. We have the solar panels on the roofs on 5 communities, and we're looking to install more. And then, we've tested having beehives out at a couple properties now. And, having a day where the beekeeper comes to the community and teaches the residents about the bees, and the kids can hold the honeycomb, and, they get a jar of honey. So
that's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, that just talks about being involved in the communities in which your homes are. These are dedicated homes for rentals for people who choose to lease, for whatever reason that may be. I think we're entering a smarter era of dedicated rental communities, but Quinn Residences by far is setting standards when it comes to the product that you're delivering. And I love to see your communities and the neat things that you guys are doing. Well, we've come to the top of the hour, and this is the fun part of Inside the Vendor Network. It's called the lightning round. So I'm going to kind of rapid fire some quick questions to you. What is one metric you watch weekly?
Deliveries. So how many homes did we deliver last week?
Sure. Biggest builder mistake you've seen?
Treating rental communities as less quality than a for sale product. It's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
You have a higher standard than your typical homeowner.
100%. That is so true. Most underrated job site role?
Punch out. Getting that last 1% done.
Get it done. With care and speed. Speed or precision?
Precision.
Nice.
Speed is nice to have, but when you're owning these homes for many, many years, precision is what's needed.
One leadership trait that matters to you the most?
Accountability.
One thing you do differently, you would do differently if starting all over again?
I would buy Bitcoin when I was in high school, and then I would be buying single family homes instead of going to college in 2010 through 2014.
Yeah, same. There's a lot of things. I would have invested heavily in Facebook, probably even. That might be a little before your time. I'm a little older than you. I think that came out.
Yeah, I should have been investing in Apple instead of going to elementary school,
No, yeah, okay, there. You just had to land the plane on my age, right? If operators and industry leaders only remember one thing about building entire rental communities at scale, what should it be?
So to wrap it up, I would say that building these rental communities at scale is not about speed. It's about the systems. So having that predictability and accountability that we talked about earlier, so that when the vendor steps on site, they know the goal that we're trying to achieve and the standards that are being set, so that we are protecting the NOI and having, maintenance-free community down the road, but also finishing that 1% of the house so that we can accept the home and deliver it to our ultimate end customer, which is the resident. And we want that resident to have an incredible move-in experience. When they move in, everything is complete and there's not any, they move in and they don't have any issues. That really drives the customer experience. And then when it comes time for renewal, they want to stay and live in our communities.
100%. Peyton, thank you for sharing both the discipline and the leadership required to scale dedicated rental communities. Quinn is absolutely one of my favorite builders and owner-operators out there, and developers. I mean, you guys are adding supply in a market that has demand greater than the supply. And so you're filling a need. You're not going out there and buying up homes off the market and making decreasing the path of home ownership. You're increasing the possible path of home ownership for those who want to experience a homeowner-like community, but they choose to lease for whatever reason they choose to lease. So thank you for adding supply. Thank you for being an amazing organization and leader, and a friend of mine, and all of our friends over at Quinn. So thank you again. This conversation highlights that building rental neighborhoods isn't about speed. It's about systems. It's about the people involved in this ecosystem who care. And of course, a final thank you to Palisade Wall Panel and Shower Systems, trusted across SFR and BTR portfolios for faster installs, cleaner turns, and long-term durability, and getting through that 1% real quick with no punch. So if this episode added value, please subscribe, share it with someone in your network, share it within your organization. I am your host, Yovonne Kenny, and we'll see you next time on Inside the Vendor Network. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, and let's keep the conversations like we had today with Mr. Peyton Harm, the Vice President of Construction at Quinn Residences. Thank you for joining us today, Peyton. It's been my pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me, Yvonne. This was fun.
Yes, it was.